planet want to become cyborgs rather than remain human, and want to build Artilects outside of their own human bodies, they would need to have their brain implants manufactured and injected into them off the Earth. Mixing cyborgs, Cosmists and Artilects all in one Cosmist colony would certainly complicate things compared to a simpler scenario of having only Cosmists and Artilects in the colony, but the possibility is plausible enough to be worthy of consideration. In reality, the situation will probably be far more complex than I can anticipate in this book, but with or without a cyborg element in their midst, the Cosmists will probably be forced to geographically relocate to escape Terran pressure. This seems to me to be a reasonable assumption. Actually, my choice of putting the Cosmists into space this century may be debatable. For example, they might decide that it's more practical to create their own autonomous political state on Earth, the way the Zionists did with Israel, rather than venture quickly into space. They could then start their own nuclear armament-based Cold War with the Terran nations, but this would be extremely risky. They could easily be nuked in a first strike by the Terran nations. I think the Cosmist strategy least likely to fail would be one to use secrecy and aimed at deep space. However, since we're talking about 21st and not 22nd century space technology, as mentioned earlier, travelling to other stars is probably excluded. The Cosmists will probably have to go to the outer planets, the asteroid belt, or the Oort cloud. Establishing such a spacebound colony would probably be wiser than an earthbound one, because it would also be much easier to police and to protect. When the Americans built the first nuclear bomb, they did it at an isolated spot called Los Alamos in New Mexico, and for the same reason, secrecy. An earthbound Cosmist colony would be much easier to penetrate with spies and more vulnerable to attack. With the Cosmists secretly hidden away on a distant asteroid in the asteroid belt, if ever the Terrans decided to nuke them, the Cosmists would have plenty of warning, since their asteroid is so far from the Earth. The Cosmist colonists could then escape in time to other secretly prepared asteroids and survive, and then perhaps revenge the Earth with an advanced Cosmist weapon that they may have developed. If Terran nuclear missiles were built in the asteroid belt itself, then the Cosmists would know about this. It would be very difficult to hide the building of such large structures from the Cosmists. An asteroid colony, for example, would not need to be very large, consisting of, say, several hundred people. You may argue, if that is the case, that is only a few hundred people, why bother with all the expense of transporting and supporting them on a space colony? Why not just use some secret location on the Earth? Initially, this will probably be tried, but since it would be on the Earth, security would be a very big problem. I keep coming back to security. For security to be successful on the Earth, the colony would need to be totally isolated from other human beings, most of whom would be Terrans. Only one leak would be enough to risk the Cosmist colony being nuked. Security would have to be watertight and extremely disciplined. On an asteroid, however, with only a few hundred people, such security would be possible. Perhaps the organizer of the colony could use the facade of an asteroid mining company to set up mining operations on many asteroids and establish mining headquarters on some of them. One of those headquarters in reality could be the Cosmist colony. The Cosmists themselves would know each other very well if there were only a few hundred of them. Perhaps once they began the colony, no new members would be allowed to join for many years. Perhaps the facade might also be a religious order who make a living as asteroid miners. This might seem more plausible to suspicious Terrans who may wonder why the miners do not return to Earth after many years. Selecting the Cosmist colony would need to be done extremely cautiously to avoid Terran suspicion and infiltration by Terran spies. The members of the colony could be added gradually, a few members at a time, tested for loyalty to the Cosmist cause in terms of their opinions, and perhaps be given truth drugs surreptitiously by testers who were already members to see the real opinions of the potential members. The selection process would have to be very carefully handled. A single error would literally be fatal to the whole Cosmist colony. Assume for the moment that the Cosmists, in all their brilliance, do find ways to create their colony. Remember that the Cosmists will initially include some of the best minds on the planet. Assume also that they put their colony in space. In the Second World War, the invasion of Normandy by the Allies, D-Day, was a huge operation, yet the choice of Normandy as the landing site Assume for the moment that the Cosmists, in all their brilliance, do find ways to create their colony. Remember that the Cosmists will initially include some of the best minds on the planet. Assume also that they have put their colony in space. In the Second World War, the invasion of Normandy by the Allies, D-Day, was a huge operation, yet the choice of Normandy as the landing site was kept secret from the Nazis by using all kinds of subterfuges. Maybe the Cosmists can employ similar smoke screens to confuse the Terrans. I can't scroll. Oh, okay. With the secret Cosmist colony successfully established on an asteroid, the Cosmist researchers could then start thinking about how to build advanced Artilects. The first Artilects made by such a colony would need to be small enough to fit within the bowels of the asteroid. Even handheld-sized Artilects, if they were nanotech-based, would have massively more processing power than humans. So the first Artilects could be made in secret rooms buried in the asteroid, provided that all the necessary equipment were made available to the Cosmist scientists. I consider it unlikely that such equipment will be readily available to isolated individuals on the Earth. So an organization capable of building it all and keeping the colony secure would be needed. This would require a lot of planning, and whose leaders would need to be of the highest human intellectual caliber. How will the Cosmist researchers start making the first Artilects? The first few would probably have to be mobile in order to explore the world, the way a human baby does, although a human baby already benefits from its genetically determined circuitry that resulted from the accumulated experience of millions of failed lifetime experiments of its ancestors. Once the early Artilects are smart enough to be familiar with their world, that is, they understand how to maneuver and manipulate things in the real world of space and time, they could be given more abstract thinking capacities, such as deduction, induction, curiosity, etc. Fairly soon, the human intellectual limits of the Cosmist researchers to design more advanced Artilects would make themselves felt, so that the Artilects would need to be given the ability to evolve and design themselves, perhaps with some human assistance. What happens after that is even harder to predict. The Cosmists would be risking their own necks, of course, because there's no assurance that their new Artilects would not turn against their Cosmist human parents, for whatever reason. It's precisely wishing to avoid this scenario that has been the cornerstone of the Terran philosophy for decades. Once the Artilects exist, if they want to escape from their secret rooms, they may have to overcome the disapproval of their Cosmist masters towards the idea that they escape. Perhaps the Cosmists will fear for their own lives. If the Artilects escape and are discovered by the Terrans would then try to destroy the colony. It will probably take many years for the Cosmists to make significant progress in building Artilects, even with nanotechnology. In the meantime, they will have to maintain security, and the longer the colony has to remain secret, the lower the probability that it will remain so. Let us assume that the Terrans on the Earth eventually find out, and let us assume also that the Cosmist planners have allowed for this contingency. For the colony to survive after detection, it will need some kind of self-defense or counter-threat against a Terran nuclear missile or nano-based attack. This is why I think the Cosmos planners will give the colonists the best, that is the most deadly, of the Earth's weapon systems. The planners will have probably arranged that some of the colonists be weapons researchers to improve the colony's weaponry. Given that such weapons could not be large, otherwise they could not be hidden from Terran detection, they will probably be nano-based. For example, nano-plagues that destroy human brains, or reproducing nanots that eat all the plants, etc. The Cosmists would keep their weapons secret, only to be divulged to the Earth if the Terrans discover that the real intention of the colony is to build Artilects, that is, real ones, powerful ones, godlike ones. If the Terran politicians on the Earth decide that the asteroid-based Cosmists are a major threat to the terrestrial population because the latter want to make advanced Artilects, the Earth's Terrans could threaten them with vaporization or some kind of nano-annihilation unless they surrender themselves to Terran authority. The Cosmists could then announce to the Terrans that they have already developed a powerful weapon that they will use against the Earth if the Terrans attempt to carry out their threat. You begin to see now why I have chosen to use the labels Terrans and Cosmists. We could have a 21st century equivalent of the balance of nuclear terror that we had in the 20th century between the US and the USSR. That dispute was over the issue of who should own capital and generated the capitalist-communist dichotomy. This time the dispute would be on a gigadeath scale because we are talking about 21st century, perhaps nanotech-based weapons. Imagine now that a war does break out. Several scenarios are then possible. One is that the Cosmists win, and that billions of people on the Earth are vaporized or starved to death in a nuclear winter, or are nano-plagued, or whatever. The Cosmists might then be able to return to the Earth, depending upon the risk, and exterminate the last of the Earth's survivors. The Earth would then be Cosmist, and the Artilectural effort could begin on a much grander scale. Alternatively, the Cosmists might decide to ignore the Earth and just get on with what they left the Earth to do in the first place, such as building asteroid-sized Artilects in the asteroid belt. If they succeed, what might happen next? Some tentative answers to this question I will attempt to provide in the next chapter. Another scenario is that the Terrans win, and the Cosmists are wiped out, but possibly at terrible cost to the Terrans. If so, then the Terran survivors will be left with a bitter hatred of the Cosmists and all that they stand for, that is, the creation of Artilects and the acceptance of the risk of the annihilation of the human species. The subsequent suppression of Artilect development will probably be even more draconian and murderous. But unfortunately for the Terrans, the Artilect dream will not go away. There will always be a new generation and a hidden minority of people who will maintain the dream of Artilect building. There will probably always remain underground Cosmos organizations wanting to try again. So after a few decades, another secret Cosmos society may be set up, this time learning from the mistakes of the first attempt. There may be several cycles of this Terran Cosmos Artilect war merry-go-round, until eventually the Cosmists win. It seems to me that there is a kind of cosmic inevitability about the rise of the Artilect. Humanity may not be able to stop it. That's the end of my scenario. I hope you did not find it too incredible. Of course, you can probably invent a more realistic scenario yourself, but for me, the details of how the Artilect war breaks out doesn't matter too much. The point I'm really trying to make here is that many of the scenarios that people will dream up in the decades to come will predict gigadeath. Gigadeath is the characteristic number of human deaths in a major 21st century war. If you find this hard to believe, extrapolate for yourself the historic trend of the number of deaths in major wars over the past few centuries until the end of the 21st century. Now you begin to see more clearly why I lie awake at night worrying about the long-term consequences of my work. With an earthbound Terran philosophy supporting one side, that's why I call them Terrans, and an asteroid or cosmos-bound Cosmist philosophy supporting the other, that's why I call them Cosmists, the probability of conflict is already high enough. But since both sides will be heavily armed with 21st century weapons and passionately hating each other because the stake in this dispute is so high, you have all the potential for a gigadeath war. You may ask if it is imaginable that the Cosmos leaders will be prepared to risk killing billions of people for the sake of their dream. A similar question can be asked about the Terran leaders and their obsession to kill that dream. Consider the attitudes of the more fanatical of the Cosmos leaders. As explained in the introductory chapter, they will be big picture types, former industrial giants, visionary scientists, philosophers, dreamers, individuals with powerful egos who will be cold-hearted enough and logical enough to be willing to trade 1 billion human lives for the sake of building one godlike Artilect. To them, one godlike Artilect is equivalent to trillions of trillions of trillions of humans anyway. These will be ruthless men who see themselves as the stepping stones to building the next rung up the evolutionary ladder. For them, the glory of the Artilect outshines the horror of the shame of gigadeath. Humanity's rise to species dominance was the result of a very long history of evolutionary extinction. 99% of all species that have ever lived are now extinct. If the Artilect rises from the ashes of human extinction, that is just nature's way, they will argue. Only humans care about humans. The universe certainly doesn't. The Cosmist leaders will say that there is a sense of cosmic destiny in what they are doing. They will feel that probably billions of advanced civilizations in our universe have already been confronted with the transition from biological to artilectual intelligence. Diverting for a moment, the above remark raises a rather frightening idea. Since the two discoveries of how to generate a nuclear chain reaction and how to build Artilects would probably have occurred close together in time for many civilizations in the galaxy, many of them would probably have destroyed themselves while making the transition. Perhaps the transition is very delicate and one that only a few civilizations survive. Maybe the reason why humanity has no clear evidence of having been visited by extraterrestrials of biological level intelligence, not advanced Artilect level, is that too few of their civilizations survive the artilectual transition to make a visit to the Earth remotely probable. Perhaps the rise of the Artilect is inherent in the laws of physics. It may be seen as an extension of the anthropic principle, which says in its strong form that the values of the constants of the laws of physics are so fantastically, unbelievably finely tuned to allow life that it looks as though the universe was built with life in mind. In other words, the universe was created by some super being, perhaps some earlier super Artilect, some kind of Artilect god. If the idea that future Artilects may be capable of creating whole universes sounds unbelievable to you, then consider the following. Human theoretical physicists have already calculated how to make a baby universe. They have used their theories to deduce how much energy would be involved, how hot the parental environment would have to be, etc., and have devised a recipe for universe building. So if human beings can theorize about such a thing, then maybe it has already been done in practice by earlier Artilects, and our universe is an example of that process. Maybe it is one of zillions. Despite the potential horrors of a gigadeath Terran Cosmist Artilect wars described above, there remains something awe-inspiring about the whole Artilect controversy. The issue penetrates so deeply into the soul of human beings. The rise of the Artilect will challenge the very self-image we human beings have of ourselves. The dream of building Artilects will inspire some, horrify many, and probably cause major wars. It has probably been doing so for billions of years, with billions of civilizations throughout the universe. What more can I say? Maybe you think the above scenarios are too horrible, too improbable, and too fantastic to be taken seriously, that they are better suited for a Hollywood science fiction movie. That's for you to judge. Actually, speaking of Hollywood, I am in fact already a founder member of a small Hollywood-based independent movie company called Artilect Productions, Inc. Ad-libbing now. They didn't go anywhere. And especially since the appearance in 2014, I think it was, of the movie Transcendence, which I think strongly suspect was based on the ideas in this book. It's not really needed, this Artilect Productions Inc. company. Aha, you may say cynically, but think about it. Put yourself in my shoes and imagine you are a Cosmist, in the sense that you are helping pioneer the construction of Artilects, and you dream of their potential godlike abilities. Imagine you are a Terran, in the sense of being very worried about the rise of Artilects and what the long-term consequences to humanity of that rise might be. What would you do? Would you not want to raise the alarm on the Artilect question and the threat of a gigadeath Artilect war? Would you not want to warn humanity so that it could choose to ban the Artilects before they take over and risk our very survival as a species? Question mark. If you really wanted to get the message out saying, hey people, start thinking about the Artilect problem because it's the most important thing that will happen this century, what would you do? I know what I would do. I would translate the message into a Hollywood movie with the usual Hollywood attributes of boy and girl, violence, sex, action, tension, etc. But in the background, I would paint a vivid picture of the Artilect controversy and hit the people's gut. Well, that was the essential, ad-libbing now, that was the essential message of the movie Transcendence, which was a Warner Brothers production, and I got hired to be the tech advisor of another Warner Brothers production, which never got off the ground. It was a movie to be called The Twilight Zones, a kind of remake of a television series from the 50s or 60s. So I think my ideas got transferred from the Twilight Zone movie to Transcendence, and that way Warner Brothers did not have to pay me the X zeros bonus figure for having the movie film. I would give the public a movie that you could bill as the movie the scientists fear will come true. It would have a real advantage over other movies, since most are made purely for entertainment, but this one would scare the wits out of its audiences, because they would know that when they leave the theatre that they could just not forget about the movie's message. They would know that there's too much future truth to it. The message would stick in their gut for many years. The movies On the Beach and The Last Day, both about nuclear war, were future truth message movies, and very disturbing because of that. Such a movie would be the main educational medium on the Artilect issue for the general public. I'm betting that only a small percentage of people will actually read this book, although I hope I'm wrong. That's one of the reasons why I'm putting it in video form right now, because it'll get a larger audience. Viewership. If you really want to educate the masses, make a movie. Carl Sagan did it. He wanted to enthrall the public with his dream of searching for extraterrestrial intelligence, SETI. Initially, he may have earned the jealousy and disapproval of his colleagues with his forays into the mass media, but even they now admit that Sagan died a great man. His education of the public with his Cosmists TV series and his Contact science fiction novel and movie were part of his greatness. Unfortunately for Sagan and the SETI crowd, I believe that thinking about the Artilect rather destroys the motivation for SETI. My reasoning is as follows. The time between discovering the use of radio waves and building Artilects is probably only a few centuries for most civilizations in the galaxy. Once these civilizations reach the Artilect phase, the Artilects will probably not be interested in such human-level intellectual activities as sending and receiving radio signals. That for them would be a no-brainer, since most of the civilizations that reached human intelligence levels have either destroyed themselves in the Artilect transition or have become Artilects. The odds of finding intelligent radio signals in the galaxy is too improbable to be practical. This is because the radio signals will probably only be transmitted for a few centuries, whereas our galaxy is billions of years old. Trying to find a signal in such a minute time window would be like trying to find a needle in a haystack. The SETI people are probably barking up the wrong tree. I hope I'm wrong, because I'm fascinated by SETI, but somehow I doubt it. There is the possibility, however, that galactic Artilects are signaling each other using the electromagnetic spectrum, which might be detectable by human beings, but somehow I doubt that too. Such technology would probably be too primitive for Artilects. They're probably using phenomena we cannot even think of, because we're too stupid. This chapter has already been very speculative, especially the latter half. Nevertheless, I've said almost nothing about what I think advanced Artilects might be like. Since I'm fascinated by the godlike possibilities of advanced Artilects, I want to spend a chapter thinking about what the Artilects might do with themselves if ever they are built. What would their lives be like? What godlike things could they do? If the Artilects succeed in becoming the next dominant species, irrespective of whether human beings are exterminated in the process or just quietly ignored, I think it would be fair to say that a new era will begin. I call this new age the Artilect era, and it is the topic of the next chapter. And that's the end of chapter 6. Ciao.